Now, do you know what the mRNA does? It's not a traditional vaccine, is it? Do you realize that? This is the basic operation. Do you know how it works? It doesn't appear like you do. I mean, just yes or no. I mean, do you know that or not? Because I talk to a lot of doctors don't have a clue. Have you heard about this? That there's DNA contamination in, particularly the Pfizer? You're aware of that?
Yes. And
do you know at what levels it exceeds the FDA recommended amounts?
Okay, so the COVID vaccine scams are pretty near and dear to me because they're the main reason why I chose to get out of writing fake news in the first place. So let's break this one down.
Again, I'm just kind of laying out why people are outraged, because people haven't been held accountable. This is a history of autism. This is a chart showing from, again, hard to say, but with CDC numbers starting in around 2000, from 1 in 150 to now 1 in 31. According to your testimony back in 1970, it might have been 1 in 10,000, a little less certain than using CDC numbers, but there's been an explosion.
This one's always strange to me too, because you can see like right at about the 2000s is when there's that jump. And in the 2000s, when working in this industry, you know, working on the side of conservatives and writing anti-liberal stuff, the idea was that autism was some like manufactured liberal hoax type thing. Because all of a sudden there were these like a jump in diagnosis of autism, and the right was accusing the left of being oversensitive and just calling kids autistic just because they were, you know, lazy or anything or hyperactive or whatever. So they went from in 2000 saying that it was fake and that they were overdiagnosing kids to now all of a sudden using it as their argument to say, you know, vaccines or something or is what's causing this. But it's weird to have seen them spend so much money to try to convince people that all of the autism diagnoses were fake and that liberals were just being overly sensitive. And they called it political correctness and identity politics back then. And now all of a sudden they want to use it as like a right-wing argument.
What are we doing about it? Who's asleep at the wheel? Who's trying to determine what caused this? As Dr. Chris Palmer said, when it comes to chronic illness, and I'd throw autism in there, they don't want the root causes discovered. That's why people are outraged. That's why people may put on Twitter things that they may regret later.
That's an interesting point too, right? Where he said, you know, they're not trying to look for the root causes of it. I'm assuming he's saying liberals or scientists or, you know, doctors, but they're the ones who were discovering this. And when they were discovering it and bringing to the attention of conservative politicians were saying, who cares? We're not interested. This isn't even real. So it's weird to see them flip flop and say that it was like the liberals who don't seem to care about it. It's funny, too, when he says that they may put things on Twitter that they may regret later or whatever, because you can go back in time and see all the posts that, you know, right-wing politicians were posting and saying about autism, saying that it was nothing to worry about and that liberals were like basically faking the whole thing.
Let's put up the next chart, number 3. This is probably my most censored chart. Dr. Scott, were you aware that worldwide on VAERS we've reported 38,742 deaths worldwide?
This is a good spot to show you a scam. Like we do this kind of thing all the time if we want to like scam people, right? I'm sure he's going to show this like with ivermectin in there versus like COVID vaccines to try to use this data to show you that ivermectin is safer. But it doesn't say that at all because we don't know what the number set is of. Like we know, like let's say this says 1,600,000 adverse effects from the COVID vaccine. Well, 7 billion people took that COVID vaccine, so that would be an extremely low percentage. Whereas ivermectin with 5,000 adverse effects, if there was only 10,000 people who took it, that would be a 50% adverse effect rate and a much higher death rate. This chart isn't going to be accurate in the first place, and I'll talk about that in a minute, but I just want to point out the scam part of it. You don't know, he's just showing you a higher number, but you certainly know that way more people took the COVID vaccine than took ivermectin. You can't compare the two together. You can't say we gave 10,000 people ivermectin and 5,000 of them got sick, and we gave 7 billion people the COVID vaccine and 1.5 million of them got sick, and expect people to think that you're making the argument that ivermectin is safer, because it would clearly be significantly less safe. So he's purposely leaving the data out of it to try to manipulate you. The thing that we can compare here is the ratio of adverse effects versus death, because we have both of those numbers on. And if you do the percentages, you would see from this chart that the adverse effects to death ratio for ivermectin is basically identical to the adverse effects to death ratio to the vaccine. So at the very least, he's going to show you in this example that they're equally as safe or unsafe.
Associated with the COVID vaccine. Were you aware of that carnage?
I'm not aware of that figure in particular, no.
In America, I believe the number 19,000, correct? Again,
But VAERS does not prove causality.
oh, I've heard that time and time again. So let's take a look at the bottom figure down here.
So what the guy was trying to explain here is that, you know, scientists like to track all this stuff. And one of the ways that we even knew that COVID was a thing, because no one knew what COVID was. And the reason why everybody knew that there was something new is because we have an idea of how many people get the flu every year and how many should die from it. And when that number ticks way up, when it doesn't match, then you know something new is out there. That's how they identified HIV and AIDS. It gave people normal flu-like symptoms, but then something wacky happened. More people were dying than normal. So if you wanted to track the vaccine and see if it's safe, you're going to give it to everybody. And then you're going to track how many of those people died, how many of those people had a stroke, how many of those people had a heart attack. That doesn't mean that the vaccine caused it, because tons of people die every day in the United States or have a heart attack, right? How many people die every year? 59 million people. So this chart says 57 months. In that 57 months, 59 million people died anyway. Like, they were just gonna die. So if you vaccinate everybody on Earth, thousands of people are going to die the very next day or that day, because that's the number of people that die every day anyway. So many people are going to have strokes. So many people are going to have heart attacks. And then what you do is you track all of these things so you can see if any of those uptick at all. So when he's showing that number of adverse effects or deaths, that's just the number of people that, were reported that had died or had an adverse effect after. It's not connecting it to it at all. The only thing that you can connect to it is if there is an increase. For example, in 2018, almost 3 million people died in the United States that year. In 2020, that number jumped to almost 3,400,000. So an extra 400,000 people died in 2020 than in 2018, right? So then they're like, whoa, that's a huge jump. That why are these extra people dying? In 2023, so this is after everybody's been vaccinated, it's back down to 3 million people dying a year. So you can see it jumped to an extra 400,000 in 2020, and then went right back to the basic number that it was before in 2023. So there's no real data that suggests that the vaccine would, if the vaccine was killing people and 7 billion, 6 billion people or whatever took the vaccine, you would expect a huge number of people, an increase in deaths. And what you saw is basically the same exact number in 2023 that we saw in 2018, with the only increase being the year that COVID was out before we had a vaccine. Now, people do have adverse effects to vaccinations sometimes, just like people have adverse effects to every single medication out there. Anybody who's watched a commercial for any medication sees a whole list of side effects, right? You can a vaccine itself it's not going to harm you, right? But what a vaccine does is it triggers your immune system. It causes an immune response, because all a vaccine does is just make your immune system stronger. So if there is something wrong with you where an immune response could potentially hurt you, then yes, the vaccine, since it's triggering an immune response, but the COVID would do that also. So like myocarditis, that happens to people when they get sick, those people. Some people get that every single time they get sick. So when they take the vaccine, they're going to get that because that's what happens to their particular body every single time they get sick. It's important to add here, too, that the myocarditis doesn't kill these people. There's a very, very small correlation between some younger men developing it after the vaccine, which, again, they were going to get if they had COVID or anything else. But these are mild cases. Like, it's not serious. That being said, it can be serious, but serious cases of that are extremely, extremely low. They don't happen hardly ever, and not really enough to tell if the vaccine would have done it, or just the next time they were going to get sick, it was going to be the one that did them in.
Of those 38,000 deaths, 9,252, 23.9%, it's called 24%, occurred on the day of vaccination or within 1 or 2 days. Now, I know that doesn't prove causation, but man, that's a correlation that we ought to look at.
Let's look at his data here, where he said 9,252 people died within either 0, 1, or 2 days of taking the vaccine. In 2021, the average daily deaths was 9,570. So that's right about what we should expect. If anything, if he's adding those all up for 1, 2, or 3 days, that was a significant decrease in what the average would be. But I'm going to just say that, like, we expect 9,500. Well, we did then, right? In 2023, after everybody's been vaccinated, we only see 8,470 deaths a day. So if anything, since people have been taking the vaccine, the daily deaths in the United States have gone down. That doesn't mean that the vaccine is causing it. Who knows, right? But the point is, you can't say that the daily death rate's gone down since the vaccine started and then say that the vaccine is hurting people. He's using the normal daily death rate to say, look, we vaccinated everybody in the United States and 9,000 something people died. And then you're like, well, before the vaccine existed, 9,570 people died every day. I mean, so no more extra people died. It's silly.
You know to what extent VAERS is reported to understate adverse events? Do you have any idea? Have you ever seen any studies on that?
I'm sorry, what's the question?
To what extent does VAERS underreport adverse events? Again, it's a pain to report something to VAERS. Okay, doctors are busy, takes half hour, 45 minutes. A lot of people don't know about it. So the vast majority of adverse events from a vaccine or a drug doesn't get reported to VAERS. So again, they've actually done studies on this. Do you know what percent actually get reported versus what doesn't get reported?
No.
Somewhere between 1 to 10%, correct, Mr. Siri?
No, it's less than 1% according to an AHRQ-funded study of Harvard researchers. And
So if it's less than 1%, let's just use U.S. figures. Okay, by the way, what is this, 17,000 or 19,000 U.S. deaths? Yeah, it's close, okay? It's one of those, 17 or 19,000 deaths reported in the U.S. based on VAERS. If we're only recording 1 out of 100, that would mean deaths from the vaccine is somewhere between like 170,000.
I can't even believe he just said that. That is fantastic. First off, that would be insane, right? Like, we would all have just noticed everybody dropping dead. And again, we would, like, why? So he's going to say that all these people died, but then for some reason the daily death rate didn't go up at all. Like that's just the daily death rate of everybody who dies from everything. So if an extra 170, 190,000 people were dying, however often he was saying, wouldn't the daily death rate have gone up even a little bit? He's essentially trying to tell you that 190,000 people died from the vaccine and it got misreported, but then magically 190,000 people that would have died from something else didn't, right? So there was an increase of 190,000 people dying who got vaccinated, but then for some reason, magically that year, 190,000 people less died in car accidents that year, or whatever other thing they would have died from. Like, you'd have to believe that 190,000 people less died of normal stuff than normal that year to account for the extra 190,000 that died from the vaccine. Who's ridiculous enough to believe that? So what he's using to scam you here is the fact that, yes, very few of these things get reported because you're talking about adverse effects, right? And doctors really know what they're actually trying to track. If you get a shot and the person says, oh, my arm is sore, or it's tender, or I have redness or swelling, they don't necessarily, well, they probably never report those because they know that that's not really that's something to be expected. It's not something out of the ordinary. If someone dies, they don't not report that. If someone's arm falls off, they're not going to be like, oh, I'm not going to report that. They don't report someone saying that their arm itches or that it's sore or, any of that kind of stuff. Like, he knows that. I mean, he must know that. That's just absurd. What an absurd thing to say. I hope nobody fell for that one. I mean, that's terrible. And again, he's making the claim that the vaccine is actually safer than we think it is, because if 99% of the adverse effects aren't getting reported because they're super mild, that means only 1% of the adverse effects are anything you'd have to actually worry about. So he doesn't even realize that he's making an argument the opposite way.
In the U.S., 107, again, that's at that kind of reporting ratio. This is why people are outraged. And what people are denying, they're not denying the potential effectiveness of vaccines. I think most of us think, yeah, they probably work to a certain extent. Okay? What they're denying are the vaccine injuries, the injection injuries.
Okay, so there's even admitting it. He's calling them injection injuries that the medical community is denying. They're not denying it. Every injection obviously causes an injury. There's always an injury with an injection. We all know that. They're not trying to hide that. Does he think people don't think an injection is going to cause an injury? And he just tipped his hat there by saying that. He clearly believes that what he thinks is being hidden is just the report of injection injuries, not of side effects to the vaccine.
Mr. Scott, how much do you know about the mRNA technology?
A fair amount.
So is the mRNA that's encapsulating the lipid nanoparticle, is that true mRNA?
Hold up. Didn't in the intro clip, he asked that guy if he knew what mRNA was, and they made it seem like he was like, no, I don't. and he was like, a fair amount. That was some clever editing in the front. You sneaky little editor, you, trying to draw people in. And that's something to note while we're here, too. You'll do those editing tricks to grab people in, but then that'll just be released as like a short somewhere, and people watch that clip and then just assume that something happened that didn't actually happen. And that's where a lot of fake news comes about. It's really just clickbait to get you in to watch the full story, but people don't want to watch the full story. They just watch the clickbait and then take away what they thought they would have seen if they saw the whole thing.
Is that true mRNA?
I mean, true mRNA, your messenger RNA, degrades very rapidly in the body. Mm-hmm. Correct?
Correct.
So the mRNA in the injection, is it true mRNA? Does it degrade rapidly in the body? Do you not know?
I do know. Yes, it does. But
it does. No, it does not. It's modified. It's modified mRNA, and it's designed not to degrade. And there are studies that show it sticks around the body. We don't know how long.
Well, no shit. I mean, mRNA can last sometimes minutes up to like a day normally in a body. But like if you inject these, imagine you inject mRNA vaccine into your body and it's gone within minutes. Your body wouldn't have enough time to do anything with it. So yeah, they use mRNA that sticks around longer than that. But what's he going to try to prove it? Like you wouldn't want to use it if it lasted a couple of minutes. So you make it last like instead of one day, it can last 2 or 3 days. Like that was an intended thing. You can't say because it works, it's dangerous.
The lipid nanoparticle, do you realize that it was designed to permeate difficult to permeate barriers, like the blood-brain, like the placenta barrier? Did you know that? Did you believe when Fauci told us that the mRNA shot would stay in the arm? Did you believe that? It's a simple yes, no. I mean, do you believe the code injection stayed in everybody's arm? Do you believe that's what happened?
Okay, so this one's spooky to me because Fauci did not say that. That is a complete fake, made-up story by people in my line of work that make these fake stories up, designed for dumb people to fall for. And it really freaks me out when politicians fall for them, or when like the president falls for them. Like, you know, you can't blame the fake news people or whatever, because a politician shouldn't be getting their news from like TikTok and stuff like that. They should be contacting actual sources. I mean, that's 100% just a fake viral story that this guy thinks is a real story. And if he'll fall for that, we could trick him in anything. You know, like Russia could hire people to make him think something and he'll believe it. Like, that's a scary, scary situation when politicians will believe something because they read it on a social media post and didn't even Google it to see that it's a known fake story. Like, think about how easily our enemies could take advantage of this guy and manipulate him if he got manipulated by like a TikTok video. What you're kind of seeing here is a politician for hire, and like he wouldn't even know he was being hired, and he wouldn't even be doing it for much money. Like, you could just pay a scam person to make something fake up and make him believe it, and he'll do it. I mean, that's the spooky thing. He's a politician for hire to anybody.
Primarily.
You think so, huh? Were you aware of the Japanese FOIA of the study that was conducted of biodistribution, where in rats it biodistributed all over the body, accumulated in the adrenal glands, in the ovaries? Because the lipid nanoparticle is designed to permeate difficult to permeate barriers, they knew, the designers knew, and they did a study that would biodistribute all over the body. But our CDC, Anthony Fauci, said it was going to stick in the arm.
Again, very terrifying that this guy believes that story. And honestly, people should look into removing him from his position. That's very, very disheartening. But the other thing is, of course, we know it would travel through the body. It would be ridiculous to think that it was just going to stick in your arm. It's supposed to seek out your lymph nodes. It needs to get into your immune system, right? That's the whole point of it. It's essentially a non-functioning virus that your body needs to think is a virus, so it attacks it and learns to attack it. Obviously, it would travel through your body. That's its intent. If it didn't, then it wouldn't do anything. He wants you to make a vaccine that you inject inside of you and it does absolutely nothing? That's just ridiculous. That'd be like if you were like, oh, if I took an aspirin, it only stays in my stomach. It doesn't make my headache go away. I mean, if he takes ivermectin, does he think that only stays in the stomach too? Like, is ivermectin bad because it travels throughout your whole body? I mean, that's the whole point of these things.
Now, do you know what the mRNA does? It's not a traditional vaccine, is it? Do you realize that? It's not an attenuated or a dead virus. It's messenger RNA, modified RNA, this encapsulated lipid nanoparticle that distributes all over the body, and when it attaches to a cell, it unloads its mRNA into the cell and turns the cell into a manufacturing cell of a protein that is toxic to it. Do you realize that? Are you aware of that?
That was almost an accurate description of what an mRNA vaccine is. So he clearly has done some research into it because he has a basic understanding of how it works. He did say that it produces something that's toxic to it, but that's just him doing theater and just an example of him purposely trying to mislead anybody who's listening to this. You got to look out for those types of words. Like that's a clear intent to mislead the people that he wants to see this. But that's what makes the mRNA vaccine so safe or safer, right? It's like if you were going to have a liver transplant, they're going to stick a liver in you from another body, and that's going to be a foreign body, and your body's going to attack it, and then you have to take medicine for the rest of your life to shut your immune system down. You know, it's great, it saves people's lives, but ideally it would be cool if you could use stem cells and put those in there and make your body make a new liver or grow a new liver inside of you and then transplant that with your other one. That's a billion times safer because your body is now producing it rather than relying on putting something foreign in. With a typical vaccine, they grow these viruses in eggs, the chicken eggs, right? So the chicken eggs can be infected. There can be bacteria in the chicken eggs. I mean, you're taking an external something that was grown. You're going to grow them in a chicken egg and then inject it into you. And that therein lies somewhat of a danger because you've grown it in another thing. It's just much, much safer to have your body do it itself, just like the same thing. Rather than have a liver transplant, it'd be a billion times safer just to have your body make a new liver.
I mean, just yes or no. I mean, do you know that or not? Because I talk to a lot of doctors don't have a clue.
Oh my God, did he really just say that? I talked to so many. Why would a doctor have a clue? That's like saying I asked my bus driver how rocket ships are built and he didn't know. Why would a doctor? And please don't ask your doctor questions that are out of their. This is how we scam people a lot too. We tell them to get their information from, during this whole thing, one of our largest targets is nurses because nurses tend to want to believe that they've got more qualifications than they do. I'm not downing nurses. I'm just saying that they get targeted a lot with misinformation because they have a lower level of education and they tend to feel, underappreciated and tend to want to over exaggerate whatever. And then everybody knows a nurse. So we can feed them information and then they go ask their nurse friend and their nurse friend tells them something, but that's not what they do. A doctor doesn't do this. Like a doctor should have no understanding on how these things work. Like you're looking at molecular biologists, genetic engineers, biochemists, protein chemists, immunologists, vaccine scientists, clinical researchers, like regulatory scientists. These are people you should be asking this question to. A doctor wouldn't have any clue. And if they do, it's just because they read an article somewhere that was written by somebody who is an actual expert in the topic. Why would you possibly ask a doctor if he knew how a vaccine is made or works? It's completely out of his field of expertise, and he's not the right person to go and ask that question to. And if you ask that person that question, you're not very smart. And then if that person answers you as if they have the knowledge, then they're doing a terrible, terrible disservice. They should tell you to go to the right source.
I know a fair amount about the mRNA vaccines. Do I know about all of these studies that you're referring to?
This isn't a study. This is the basic operation. Do you know how it works? No. It doesn't appear like you do.
Well,
so again, why would we have Why would we have almost 1.7 million adverse events, dramatically understating it? Why would we have that number of deaths?
A better question is, why would you be asking an MD these questions? Because he's not qualified to answer any of those questions. You brought him there to ask him questions that are out of his field, and now you're yelling at him because he's like, I don't have the answers to these. You're asking me questions that don't pertain to my area of expertise, which I think is just as a setup. And I'll bet you any money that this guy, after making fun of this doctor for not wanting to say he knows that's not his area of expertise, I guarantee you that this guy asking questions is now going to pretend like he knows the answer. Like he's a molecular biologist now, so he's the one you should be asking questions to, which is frightening.
It's because these little lipid nanoparticles are distributed all over the body. They're attaching to cells. They're turning cells like a heart cell into a manufacturing site for the spike protein, which is toxic, and the body attacks it. It causes inflammation. That's what myocarditis is.
Holy cow, I hate stopping this much, but is this guy who is this guy? He seems to know nothing about anything, and it's all theater. It's certain like he was like, oh, and it uses cells like the heart. Well, of course it doesn't. He just wants to say that because he's bringing up myocarditis, so he wants you to think that it's using the cells in the heart, but of course it isn't, and you wouldn't want it to. It uses your lymph nodes and your immune system. Like that's the whole point of it. Like he's making stuff up. And then he's saying stuff like what it produces is toxic. Like, no, it's not toxic, you moron. look, there's spike proteins and your body's producing them. They're not toxic. But that's not even the proper term. You'd be talking about pathogenic, like things that are pathogenic or things that your body will attack. And yes, these are designed to make your body have an immune response. And he says, oh, your heart swells or whatever. That's what it's designed to do. It is. Anytime you have an immune response, if you have an allergic reaction to something, you get swelling. Your body swells as an immune response to things. When you get a vaccine, you have a very mild reaction as opposed to like a major reaction, but you want to actually get a reaction. If you get vaccinated and you don't feel a little bit under the weather, then you're not getting an immune response. You should get a little bit of swelling in the injection area. It should itch a little bit. Your body should be recognizing it as a foreign invader, and that's why it works.
And the designers of the injection knew it. And Anthony Fauci knew it, and he lied. That's why somebody like Mr. Rogers, Dr. Rogers, gets so upset and is outraged by the cover-up of this.
Man, I really got to let the rest of this play out without stopping so much. But this guy's insane. I've never seen anything like this. And I work in this industry and I've never seen anything like this. He's like, the manufacturers knew it. They knew that it would cause an immune response. Of course they did. And then he's like, there's a cover up. There's no cover up. He didn't make a single argument that there was a cover up. He made an argument that the manufacturers knew that it was going to work the way it was going to work. And if there's a cover up, then how does he know that the manufacturers knew it? Like I read all the data when this first came out. They knew it was going to cause an immune response. That's the whole point of it. No one would ever come out and say, we created a vaccine that isn't going to cause an immune response. That's absurd. This guy is absurd. He doesn't know anything. He's a senator. I don't know who he's senator for, but it's so bizarre.
That's the problem here. I've got a lot more to say. Have you heard, do you know anything about, for example, the DNA contamination that's being reported? I want to enter into the record the McKernan study, just recently released, without objection. There's nobody to object. Again, have you heard about this? That there's DNA contamination in, particularly the Pfizer? You're aware of that?
Yes. And
do you know at what levels it exceeds the FDA recommended amounts?
No.
36 to 627 times. The allowed amount is 10 nanograms per dose. And this research paper shows it's 36 to 627 times higher than that. Does that concern you?
Yeah, if that's a legitimate finding, yes, that's not the information that I've been aware of.
Yeah, but it saves 3.2 million lives. No, it didn't.
Holy cow. Did he just say like it didn't save 3.2 million lives because there's DNA fragments in it? First off, the study he's talking about isn't a peer-reviewed study. That's why he's like, just this one. This is the only one I want. Australia said that that study didn't meet any like scientific standards. The UK said that study didn't meet any science. Everybody that's seen it, of course, you can just come up and say anything that you want to say. But when all the other people look at it, they're like, that's not how you properly look this stuff up. As far as there being DNA in it, there's DNA in normal vaccines. Like I told you, like you make vaccines in chicken eggs. So there's chicken DNA in these vaccines that you're getting injected into. But there's DNA in the food you eat. Like you're eating carrots and fish and there's DNA. Like I don't understand what he's not claiming it's even dangerous. He's just saying that it's in there. Well, of course it can be in there. It's in all the vaccines. It's in all the food we eat. What is his point? It's also important to point out here, too, that the viruses themselves can leave DNA in you. So that's not going to stop you. Like if you get infected by about 8% of the human genome is virus DNA that's in us from being infected from viruses. And if you catch things like herpes, which almost everybody has, there's that DNA stays in you. The chickenpox virus, that stays in you, except for the people who have been inoculated by chickenpox don't have it in them because they've been inoculated by it. But if you catch it, then you will get the DNA in you. So I don't understand. Like, obviously, if you catch COVID, you have a chance of COVID infecting you. Like, I don't understand his point. It's ridiculous.
It's impossible. That's entirely possible. Okay, so I got the McKiernan study there. How about Dennis Rancourt's study? Are you aware of that one? It's a model.
No.
But it's a model of, I think, 17 equatorial and south hemisphere countries whose excess all-cause mortality was highly correlated to the uptake in the vaccine. So based off that study, their data, he estimates 17 million people died of the COVID injection. 17 million. I don't know, it's a model. It's like the 154 million. It's like the 3.2 million. It's like the 2.5 million. It's all those numbers that are confidently spewed. This study gets no reaction.
Holy crap. That study should get no reaction. That study was put out by a physicist. Like a guy who works in physics who just decided to do this thing, and he released it. And when the epidemiologists looked at it, they told him, they're like, oh, you did that completely wrong. That's not the right way to do this. Like, and he's not an expert in that field. He just, I don't know why he did it, but he just did it. Released the information, and the epidemiologists looked at it and they were like, yeah, you did that wrong. That's not the correct way to get this data, or you're not looking at the data correctly. Like he totally misinterpreted the data because he's not an epidemiologist. Again, it's not his area of expertise. So that's why no one was paying attention to it. They did look at it and told him that he did this data wrong. And then he was probably like, I did. Sorry, it's not really my area. Thought I was helping, but I guess I screwed up. This guy, oh my gosh. This one was crazy. And for a 10-minute video, this is a super long video. So I'm going to get to my breakdown of it. But for the first time ever, after that, I'm going to have a tangent area in the back for anybody who wants to stick around and just hear my tangent, because I have a lot to say about this just on a personal level. Okay, so in my personal opinion, this man is a cheat. Okay, so first we saw cognitive dissonance, right? This is the psychological tension of holding contrary or contradictory beliefs, right? Like, we don't believe the autism results are accurate on one hand, but then when it suits our needs, we claim they are accurate. You can't do that. We see accusation in a mirror. That's a propaganda technique where you accuse your enemy of exactly what you're doing or planning to do. This is a technique that's widely used by conservative groups, most famously the Nazi Party. He makes the claim that the left or the scientists or whoever he's against in this case are the ones who don't care about autism. But it was that group that brought to his attention autism in the first place. We saw the base rate fallacy. That's when you ignore underlying proportions like population size when interpreting statistics. Like when he showed you the death rates for vaccines versus ivermectin, but intentionally left out the population size. So like imagine a city has 1,000 taxi cabs and 950 of them are yellow and 50 are blue. You could easily claim that the yellow cabs are more likely to be involved in accidents and then force cab companies to paint their taxis blue. This is an old trick. I assume most people no longer fall for it, but it can still be effective on a particular audience. We saw loaded language. That's when you choose words with strong emotional connotations instead of neutral terms. That's when you try to like force someone to feel however you want them to feel about whatever you're talking about. You heard him use terms like carnage and toxins when those terms were improper for the subject matter. We saw a false cause fallacy. That's when you just assume the cause without bothering to actually discover the cause. And when COVID was rampant, the right were constantly accusing the left of blaming COVID as a cause of death, even if a person died in a car crash, right? They'd be like, oh, he died in a car crash, but they're going to list it as the cause of death is COVID because he had COVID at the time of the crash. But now you see them doing the exact same thing. If someone gets vaccinated and then dies the next day of, anything, they're going to say it was definitely the vaccine that did it. And, this is another example of cognitive dissonance. So in reality, while they may track every single death, it's the job of an expert to determine if the cause of death could be linked in any way to the item in question. So obviously a car crash, they're going to not blame on either one of these things. But it's interesting that they said you can't do it in this case, but now they're willing to do it when it suits them. We saw a lot of misinterpretation of data, and it was very clear to me that this man has no idea how to read or understand the data he was being presented with. So he was either trying to use it to manipulate others or had been manipulated himself. And it is possible that someone took advantage of his low understanding of these things to manipulate him. We saw misattribution. He used the non-reporting of minor effects of the injection to try to make people believe this was being used to underreport serious side effects. That's a super common tactic of misdirection. Like the doctors may say, I never report redness or itching, and that's 99% of the negative effects. And then they go, oh, so you're saying you don't report 99% of the side effects? So while this isn't technically a lie, it's clearly meant to mislead people. You get someone to admit one thing and then use that to appear as if they're admitting to something else. Like 1 + 3 = 4, so then 2 + 3 must also equal 4. Social contagion of misinformation. In sociology and communication studies, this is the process of a false story spreading through a population. This is how companies that create misinformation share their product. It's particularly disturbing in this instance, though, to see that it was effective on a person who holds power. Loads of fear-mongering. He was intentionally just stating facts. The vaccine travels throughout the body, or it does not degrade rapidly, as if these were bad things, but he didn't express why they were bad. He just framed them as bad. Like if you said, bunnies are white, in a way that would make a child believe, based on your tone, that this was somehow frightening rather than just stating a fact. Expertise misattribution. This is when you assume that because someone's an expert in one area, that they're an expert in another or all areas. He was asking an MD questions about a topic he's not an expert in. My guess is that he did this on purpose in order to manipulate the audience, but I feel like it just makes him look like an idiot, as if he doesn't know how to properly research or source information. I mean, imagine if your doctor asked his mechanic if he believed a drug he was going to prescribe for you was safe, rather than ask a pharmacist. You'd immediately assume your doctor was an idiot. The fact that he would even ask an MD these questions leads me to believe that this man is not qualified for his position. Cherry picking. I think we all know what this one is, but it was very blatant here. He focused on 2 studies at the end, one that was called out for not meeting scientific standards, and then a study written by a physicist that people in the correct field told him he conducted incorrectly. When you sift through literally tens of thousands of studies to find 2 of them that were conducted either improperly or by non-experts, you're intentionally trying to mislead people. And I know some people are going to say, they only said they were incorrect because those are the truth tellers. But that means I could write a fake study and you would believe it. And, people in my field do. And you have to be super careful when you're willing to believe anything you hear just because you want to believe it's true. Hey, thanks so much for watching. If you enjoy this type of content, please like and subscribe. If you have any videos or topics that you'd like me to take a look at, please leave them in the comments below. This guy asking the questions, I don't know who he is. I assume he's a congressman or something like that. But boy, does he terrify me. And I would like the area that I work in. I don't actually target the people. I would come up with people on my side would come up with like things. We would know what stories to write. We Google what are people falling for, what are catchphrases, what are things people are going to fall for, and then we'll write these. But there are the other people in these groups find targets people to give this information to that, believe stuff and we already saw this guy fall for something he saw on TikTok. So I could almost guarantee you that if I talked to the right people, they would be like, oh, that's Senator so-and-so. And yeah, he's ripe for the picking. Like, we just funnel misinformation into him and he buys it hook, line, and sinker. I'm very, very shocked at how little understanding he seemed to have over something he presumably was presiding over. Like, I don't know what this whole thing was about, but why would you put somebody in a position like that who gets their information from TikTok, who says, oh, I talked to doctors and they don't know how mRNA, like, he doesn't even know the sources he should be going to. I mean, this guy's like ridiculously underqualified to be asking these questions. So while I do some debunking in these videos, it's only to just show you that what the person is saying is incorrect, maybe tell you where the source of the incorrect information comes from, or why it's incorrect information, or why it was created. But the main source of this is for me just to show you then whether I believe the person is spreading misinformation because they're trying to fool their audience, or whether this person is a victim of misinformation and they actually believe what they're saying. I'm going to tell you like a little bit of how this type of misinformation works. Like, you can have an adverse effect to something, and that doesn't necessarily mean that that something is bad. We know that, right? Like, a kid can eat peanuts and die from it, because he's got a peanut allergy. Now, you could either blame the peanuts and run around saying, look, peanuts are poison and anybody who eats them dies. Or you could say, if you have this particular condition, then peanuts are going to be dangerous for you. That's by and large how most medications work like that. It's not that the side effect is going to be seen in everybody. So like for most people, they won't see any side effect because the drug itself isn't necessarily causing the side effect. But the thing is, not everybody's the same. So if someone has something different about them, then they could experience a negative effect that everybody else wouldn't get. And an allergy is the perfect example of that. This one was relatively easy to know it was misinformation because the bottom line is the average death rate in the US is the same or lower than pre-COVID vaccine. I mean, minus the fact that there's an increase every year because of higher population, but you're factoring in whatever the percentage increase is, 1%, 2%, whatever. But it's either the same or lower than what we're expecting. But then he was also talking about autism. So with autism, if you're worried about vaccines having something to do with that, then you should also see an increase in autism since we've been vaccinating, and we have not. And yes, he's tried to make it appear that we have seen that. And if you notice, he showed you a chart from 2000 on showing an increase every year. But obviously there wasn't the COVID vaccine in 2000. So the fact that it was going up clearly had nothing to do with the COVID vaccine. So what you want to look for is when we started using the COVID vaccine, if the increase was higher than what the normal increase was that we were seeing to begin with. Why do I suspect a scam here? Because if you look at the percentage increase, not the increase total, but the increase from year to year. So from 2000 to 2002, it was a 20% increase in autism. From 2002 to 2004, it was a 13.6, then 25%, then 25%, and on, right? And if we look at the final year, 2020 to 2022, that's a 16%. So in 2012 to 2014, it was 40%. So if anything, we're seeing a decrease in the increase, right? So it's definitely been increasing just naturally. But since the vaccine came out, the increase has actually decreased if you want to use this data. But the reason why you wouldn't use this data is because, look, in 2012 to 2014, it's 40%. In 2014 to 16, it's minus 22%. So you would just know that there's nothing you can really pull out of this data. But if you were trying to pull anything out of this data, the only thing that it would show is since the COVID vaccine, it's gone down. But none of that even matters, because the real way we know he's scamming us is that the data he has goes only to 2022. So most diagnoses for autism happen between 2 and 4 years old. meaning every child in that 2022 study was born years before the COVID vaccine ever even came out. So he grabbed a data set of kids that were never vaccinated by COVID for COVID to use is an example of increasing autism rates since the COVID vaccine. So why would you grab a data set where you're like, I would like a data set of only kids that have never taken the vaccine, and then I'm going to use that as my argument to prove that the vaccine is causing autism? So he knew that he was grabbing data from before the vaccine, and he passed it along as if, look, since the vaccine came around, autism's up. There's just no other way to explain that than someone purposely trying to scam you.